Okay. I just ran out into the rain to grab something, so I'm all rained on. Um, Let me just preclude this by saying if you do not like excited um, peaks at a sort of a finished the finished product of a lot of time and a lot of work and being excited to see it all together for the first time. So a lot of being excited and kind of sharing what I've accomplished. This is probably not the video for you. I will, before or on the day that the pre-order for my deck starts sometime this week, the final test copy deck was held up, as these things happen, in mailing. And so it's taken longer to get there. It just came literally this morning. And so I will put a succinct show through of all of the cards. This is not that, right? This is me being extremely excited about a true passion project for me. I mean, I think nobody goes into creating decks because I feel like nobody goes into to creating decks without some degree of passion. I could be wrong there. But this is a particular passion project for me because it's a full circle, encapsulates everything that I love about divination, cartomancy, divination. And so this is what this is. In here is the final test copy of the deck, and it is I have not seen the majors yet, so I'm super excited. So again, you have been forewarned. So let me just set the stage because this has been a long time. Some people have seen, I've done videos in the past, but it's been a long time. So let me just set the stage. If my memory serves me correct, where this all started was from two decks that I actually really love. And one of them, just move some things out of the way. One of them is the Hermes playing card deck by Robert M. Place. I love this deck. I still love this deck. This does not preclude my love for these decks. But this is a playing card deck, right? So it is a full playing card deck that has Lenormand symbols in it, but it also has expanded out to the full 52 card playing deck. So love this deck. Love the premise of this deck. Love that it's the full deck of cards that we use. Typically now in the Western, I don't know what you would call a 52 card deck in terms of, Western playing card, playing card sets, but it's a full 52 card deck. I love this. And then the Maybe Lenormand came out. I also adore this. This is one of my absolute favorites. It has, of course, again, Lenormand in it, but it also has extra cards to fill out a full 52 card playing card deck. And I adore this. Absolutely love the backs of this. I adore this. And so from my recollection, these two cards, these two decks are what got my idea flowing. That's because I always have talked about how, if the apocalypse happened, this is where it literally started. If the apocalypse happened and I wanted to grab one deck and run, and it kind of came, I have a little Hope Lenormand that I made that looks like it's dusty. It's just a handmade Hope Lenormand. It just has titles on it. And that was like that idea that I was going to expand and run with. I thought, okay, this is great. And also I had the Tarot Arcana playing card deck, which is a full tarot deck, but it just has playing card pips. I love this. This is one of my most used decks. I use it a lot. I adore this deck so much. But it's just the playing card pips, obviously has the extra court card to make it a tarot card and has the majors, beautifully drawn majors. So my idea was, I remember running out to Walgreens and getting a couple packs of playing card decks with the same backs and starting to kind of play around with it. And then I know I went on to, because I found some of the digital cards where I started to play around with sort of a old looking deck that somebody made, that they kind of wrote the names on them, and they made sort of their own hodgepodge deck of everything if you just could take one deck with you. And so that's kind of where it started. And then at some point it started to morph into what it is today. But that's where it started, was from these decks. Now, since I started that, I know we have the Pamela Coleman Smith's Rider-Waite playing card deck. Love this. Love this one. This is a full tarot deck. It has the Rider-Waite Smith images on, but also has the playing card kind of feel to it, right? So it's the playing card, it's got the majors and all of the playing cards, although obviously it's going to have the extra court card on there. So love that, but that's just all playing cards, or all tarot on the playing cards. But I do love this deck. And then this came out at some point, which I also love. This is more similar to this deck, where this is in the style of a typical playing card deck, and it keeps that style throughout the majors. And so you have a straight playing card deck with the extra court card, and then you have the majors in the style of a traditional playing card deck. Love this deck. Love it. I don't know that this is available. This was a Kickstarter, and I can't remember if you can still purchase these or not, but I adore this as much as I adore this. So that's kind of like the idea was for me, that if I were to have one deck, that I never had to use another deck again, if I could only have one deck, you're always trying to ask me that, what would it be? It would have to be this, right? I really love playing card divination. I truly believe if I was forced into having literally one deck prior to Nellie's deck, it would probably be a straight playing card deck. That's hard. I wouldn't want to be in that position, but probably so. The most succinct. I use Lenormand so much, right? It's a major part of the professional readings that I do. I have to have those Lenormand cards there. And then I utilize tarot a lot, and I love tarot. So I needed a deck that fulfilled all those things. So then the story started to sort of morph up around it. So this is again a passion project. I have a short story that I started a very long time ago that is the basis of this. That was the basis of some dreams that I had. I've also used a lot of names from my grandmother's aunties that were immigrants that have made their way into the story of this deck. But the premise in a nutshell is that in a lighthouse somewhere off the coast of Maine in 1861, there is a lovely young woman in her 30s, early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, a lovely woman named Nellie, who's in a lighthouse, and she has 3 decks with her, and I have the actual decks. She has a copy of the Neoclassico tarot that was given to her by somebody in Boston after she was there, having immigrated over here. So she has a tarot deck that she really, and for my story purposes and the inspiration of this project, she had the Neoclassico. She also had a copy of the Das Spiel der Hoffnung. I don't know how to say that correctly. The German playing card divination combo that we know as Lenormand, or the Game of Hope, which is really what it was, right? So she has a copy of that she gained from a German woman on the crossing over to America. And then she also has a playing card deck. This is actually a reproduction from, get the date right, 1858. And this takes place in 1861. And so this is a standard playing card deck. that she would have had at the time there. So she had that, and which she was taught to read by her aunt. So she grew up with playing card divination. You can see some parallels, right? So she had these 3 decks, and she was about to spend a lot of time on her own, which is part of the story, which I won't give all away. But she's about to spend a lot of time on her own in a lighthouse with those 3 decks and some paper and some inks and some paints. And it is going to sit down and create sort of a conglomerate, a mashup of what she understands to be true of those 3 decks. So that's the premise, right? Okay, so that's where the inspiration came from, and that is the premise for Nellie's deck. So I have had, first I had this deck actually, which is a copy of the whole deck, but with just titles. I highly recommend this. I guess this is not a video on how to test decks, but if you're creating a deck, I highly recommend one way or another having a sample copy of the deck in whatever form that you have it in to work with while you're creating the deck. So for a long time I used this. I actually love this. I actually think that having a deck that is titles only is a great way to learn to read and to practice your reading skills. In fact, I teach Tales from the Woods classes, which are a mix of like a lit class or book clubby kind of class, but then we also have been diving into some sort of we pull divination in some way. And so I'm teaching one at the end of this month that is the Lighthouse Keeper's Daughter book, and go a deep dive into Nellie's deck. And of course, people will not have copies of the deck, so they will be able to print out a copy with just the titles only. And I actually think it's a great thing to have. I worked with this deck a long time with this, and I love the titles only. Now, once I had the minors done, I popped the minors in with the titles of the majors, and that's how I've been using this deck for quite some time now. And it's my beautiful, I feel like I might actually miss that combination just because I've just used it for so long. But I put it back into titles only. This is a lovely bag for my friend Deirdre that I have had with Nellie's monogram on it that I've used for all this time. And so I'm keeping my titles only there for sure. So that's how I worked with it. First with titles only for quite a while, tweaked a few things. Then as I had when the minors were done, I popped those in with the majors, and that's how it's been for quite some time. And then this is just a version. I just pulled out the Lenormand, because I obviously do a lot of Lenormand readings. And so this I just pulled out the Lenormand cards so I don't have to go through and pull them out. But to note though, the Lenormand playing card associations are based off of German playing card divination, and they really don't match with what, I don't know what you'd even call it, Western playing card divination. They really don't match up, but they do match up with the German playing card divination. Makes sense. It's a German deck, right? So on mine, I have actually placed moved the Lenormand symbols onto the playing cards that make more sense to Western divination, the way that I read. So just to be forewarned, these are playing card associations to the Lenormand cards are not the traditional. They are mine. Oh, look at Miss Bell. They are mine. But yes, so that's that. So that brings us today when the mail comes in this lovely little bag that, my friend Miss Deirdre made and is going to make for the initial first run of the pre-order. But this actually just came today, a test one. I put a fisherman's knot on it. But this test came in as well as the sample deck, the final test deck. And I have it opened, but I have not looked at it. Of course, I've seen all the minors. I've made some adjustments in size and things, but I've been using those for a while. But I have not seen the major cards yet. So I'm super stoked. Again, if you are this is not like a measured, let's walk through and look at everything in a measured manner, kind of walk through. I will put out a succinct one for that the day that the pre-order starts sometime later in the week. This is, again, more of me just being really excited and kind of chit-chatting. So, I have these set up in their number sets because numbers are really important for this deck. Again, I'll go into it a little more later, but the premise of deciding sort of what images were on what in the minors starts with playing card, my style, I guess I need to qualify, my style of playing card divination first, then the fortune telling cards that go on it, and then making sure that those images for the fortune telling cards are nod and lean into or are a facet in some way to those tarot minors. So it's been very interesting, right, to juggle that and to sort of have that priority, but then to make sure that they all sort of fit together. And there's some starts with the numbers, because I read playing card divination and tarot from a numbers space first. So this is very much in tune to the way that I see the numbers and that sort of number plus the suit with tarot. So that was, but that's important to know. Like, where did I start? I started with playing cards. Then I added the layer of the fortune telling cards, but at the same time with those fortune telling cards, making sure that there was a way into tarot with those has been the juggle there. So obviously we have the playing card suits here with the spades, the hearts, the diamonds, and the clubs. And then if you flip it over, you have those, but you have the wands, the swords, the cups, and the coins that you would have with tarot. So that's how I did the indices, is to have one side be the playing cards and one side be the tarot. So that's that. The backs were actually hand drawn out by my friend Bart. I think they were originally colored green. They can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was originally colored green. I played with some different colors until it felt like it was Nellie's deck, and this is what it turned out. And of course, with some aging to them, because these would have been found in an empty lighthouse. You can imagine having come into an empty lighthouse, dust everywhere, found a little writing desk, as you saw, and this and a journal, and this deck. So there is an aged quality to them. So that's the backings of them. I love the backs. So, and then of course you can kind of see by fanning them out, she used various different papers, and of course then different just aging happens differently. And so they're all kind of colors of parchment and sort of layers of parchment, but they are not each one the exact same coloration there. Oh, sorry. I'm so excited. It's just so fun. You have these ideas, you have this concept. And of course, with this, there's actually a story. So in the guidebook, there's, journal entry. So it's not a linear story, so to speak, like, once upon a time and then it comes to the end. But you get to sort of get to know Nellie, I guess you could say, and get to know her story through the journal entries. So each card will have a journal entry that may or may not, it's not super closely tied necessarily to the actual card that she's working on that day, but she would have written a journal entry. She would have worked on the card, that she had some notes about what that card and what she understands it, and then sort of keywords or understanding of it as a playing card, as a fortune telling card, and or as a tarot card, depending on the card. So that's kind of how the guidebook though has her journal. So it's that idea of having just randomly found somebody's journal and this deck of playing cards that are just loosely sketched out. I tried really hard, which was easy because I am not a sketcher at all, and so this is way out of my comfort zone. I could only achieve this through the use of an iPad and an Apple Pencil with the undo button. Anyways, but having to try to keep that, especially as I got a little bit more comfortable, to try to keep that just sketchy look to it, because these would have been sketches that she would have done out in her journal, and then as she decided what images she was going to put on the cards. So that's kind of the premise there. So I will just I wasn't meaning to go too far, but into details about the deck. But if you've used my Story in Color Lenormand, you know that I prefer Querent and Significant instead of Lord and Lady, Man and Woman. I'm a professional reader. I don't ask people who they love or who they wish to see as a significant other. And not to mention, the significant is not always a love interest. It could be a significant partnership. There's all kinds of things. It can be a significant situation or person. It's not always the person that they're physically attracted to. So I really I love decks that have Querent and Significant. I don't even have to worry. This is always the Querent. This is always the significant person or situation to that person. So, and I also knew there was absolutely no way I can draw human people. And I think this, I don't remember, I don't want to say, but this is definitely a friend's suggestion. And so just like how you would be trying to sketch out a human face, but then it's like, okay, that I can't do any further than that. This is the kind of the concept. And I actually really like how these turned out. So we have the Querent and we have the Significant as the aces. Aces in playing card divination often were significator cards. So that's where I used that there. But we have the, that's how I did those there. Okay. So obviously these are in order right now of their numbers. They're not in the playing card or the fortune telling divination. So you can see on the minors, we have the playing card indice, we have the tarot indice, we have the image, and then we have the fortune telling style deck. Because the idea is you could take out just all the playing cards and it's a playing card deck. You could take out just the Lenormand cards, it's a Lenormand deck. You could take out all 56 minors, and that would be a 56 card fortune telling style deck, or you could take all of the cards and you have a mishmash of all of those things in a full tarot deck. So that's kind of the idea there. So I did leave the numbers on the fortune telling style deck because it's easier to then grab out the first 36 for Lenormand, and then of course grabbing the other ones if you want the full 56 card fortune telling style deck. So anyways, that's how I dealt with the man and the woman card. So I guess we'll zoom in a little bit closer here and we'll do a quick flip through and just kind of maybe odds and end things. I use these clovers because I have many memories as a child of this type of clover, and if you pull those little things out and suck on the tip of it, it's sweet. And I have so many memories of that. So that's why I use the clover. Obviously, because she grew up in a lighthouse and is also tending a lighthouse as she's creating this, and it's on the coast of somewhere on the coast of Maine, fictional lighthouse. There's the overarching theme does lean into the ocean and lighthouses and that type of thing. Although I was talking to my friend Patrick, and one of the nice things is I don't think it's a theme that makes it impossible to use if you don't care about that theme. So you can lean into that as much as you want, but that's why we have something like a barometer, which is a great fortune telling card, let me say. Here we have the foghorn. And the other fun thing about this was actually looking up, right? What were foghorns looking like in 1861? So if these are actual items, it was finding the actual item and what it could have looked as. Obviously a hand pumped foghorn. So that has also been fascinating and kind of set me down all kinds of rabbit trails. That's the foghorn. And also what they used foghorns, I always think about foghorns as just being about warnings, but they were also the call to people to come and help because there might have been a wreck or something like that as well. Anyways, we won't ramble too much. We have the tower. The other interesting thing has been, and I don't want to look at those and show you them yet because I haven't seen all the majors yet, but it was also interesting because there are certain cards in Lenormand that are not in, or that are also in tarot. So there is a tower in Lenormand which is not the same divinatory wise as the tower in tarot. Also the sun and the moon and the stars. Those were cards that I had to differentiate from the majors. So that's been interesting as well. But here we have, I guess I'll put those aside so we can talk about them afterwards. This of course is my Isabel. So cute. So cute. So that's my dog Isabel. Here we have the whip, the fox, the bouquet, the child. This is actually a friend also's profile of her child to use because these kind of these silhouettes, and you'll see this also in the lover's card with my child and a bonus child. But we have the child card. We have the storm, the tree. There's a hidden person to the side of the tree. Story time. The anchor. This actually, I have a couple versions of the anchor, but that I just couldn't get the way that I liked it. But there is a way of walking out. I grew up on the Great Lakes, Great Lake of Lake Erie, and grew up on a little lake town as well. We spent so much time there, lived there, but spent so much time there in my childhood on that Great Lake. And there's a lighthouse, a little lighthouse that's right there, as well as a big sort of Lake Erie museum with all kinds of amazing things. And there's a kind of a walkway out into the water. So that you can go out kind of course, if the high water, that gets covered up, but that was kind of where that came from. Random information. House, mountain, book. This is the actual, I have an actual leather journal that for me is Nellie's journal. And the cover of the guidebook, I'm waiting for that test to come in, but the cover of the guidebook, it looks like that. I'm trying to get that, as much as possible, have that feel of you picking up Nellie's journal. But anyway, so the book, the fish, I do really like this one. A big catch going to be pulled in. The garden, the mice, the rider, the letter, of course, lots of writing in this. The mirror, I would put this aside too because there's actually another mirror in the majors as well, but it's not really the mirror. So the birds, the clouds, the moon. So now we come into the moon and the stars, and then the sun will get to trying to figure out ways to set those apart. And the moon card in Lenormand is more about that rising and waxing energy. And so change that up. We have the star. Actually, I put that over here. The stars. The crossroad card. I actually really love that one. The lily. I used a lily of the valley. My grandma grew these around my in the same little fishing village. She outside of the kitchen window there was a big tree, and all around that, and I think along the side of the house, I'll have to ask my mom, but she grew lily of the valley, and we have seeds. Like, she packed up seeds. I know people in my family, and I have some somewhere, have seeds from those actual lily of the valleys. So that's why I used those. This actually sketched out for a tattoo that I want to get, which I haven't done yet, but that's what that's from. The compass, the heart. This is like a seal on a letter. The cross, the ship. I don't remember, but I think the ship might have been one of the first cards that I drew, or images that I drew. But anyways, that's the ship. The stork. I like flying storks. It's not necessary. It's not in the original decks even, but I like a flying stork. Here's the sun. Again, trying to differentiate it from the original, from Tarot Sun. The sun in Lenormand, again, I want to get that energy of it's coming up in the sky and it's warming everything up and it's seeing, you know, it's bringing about abundance. And so sort of the cycle and the motion of the sun and the moon I did in the minors versus the fullness of those energies in the tarot. The snake, I actually like the snake in the tree. It's even creepier in this tree, but I like that. Again, it's all kind of entangled there. But there we have the snake. I love the bear. The key, I actually have this key. My friend Bart had sent this to me for wax divination. That is really cool. And so anyways, I used that key for the key. The ring card. The coffin was a lot of fun because, again, researching coffins in the time period. And so you can see on here, there is a little window to look in, as well as a system here going inside so that if the person isn't actually dead, they can ring the bell and the person can, you know, the caretaker can come by and look to make sure, are they alive and breathing, and or are they vampires? Are they undead? Like, who knows, right? And there were all kinds of things set into place. It was fascinating. This was one of the most fascinating. And I knew about this, but when you really deep dive in and see some of the things that were made where they were like tombs, that the opening, the handles were on the inside so that they could open it up and get out, or that there were air tubes going in just in case the person was still alive. Absolutely fascinating. That was an interesting deep dive. Safe matches were also an interesting deep dive. The number of women, young girls and women that were killed through the production of matches was quite horrifying. And then there were the safety matches that were supposed to actually be safer for them to create. I don't know how safe they actually were at the get-go, but that was an interesting deep dive as well. Seeds. Cake. Then the pages of air are all the 4 directions, and looking for actually old wind veins was another fascinating dive through of the different types of wind vein. I don't know if that's not even the right word. My brain's too excited. But anyways, so each of the 4 court cards of the suit of swords or spades is the 4 directions, but it's also with different wind veins. So that is the page there. But the East, rapiers. I started to go off the cards. I can't remember at which one. It might have been this one, although it might have been the Rider too. I ended up really loving that. And so the more so in the majors, but there are some of the minors even that kind of go off the side of the card that I really enjoy. Random bits of information. The scythe, the hand clasp, south, the bandage. This one is actually, it got fixed. So I've been using this deck for a couple years with the images of the minors for a while, but even without that, with the titles, did not notice it. I ordered the final test copy, and then I went to put the graphics. I've never, I guess, put the graphics in order of the fortune telling style deck, and I realized that there were 2 47s and there wasn't a 49. This was supposed to be 49. So I changed it real quick, but I'd already put the order in. So to be honest, I assumed that change would not have shown up in this final deck, but it did. And I wasn't worried about that. I already changed it in the final printing, and I wouldn't have ordered another one just for that. I would say to you, hey, it was 47 forever, and this is just my test copy. But it did get changed to the 49. The Meadow card, the Teacup, the Queen is West, the King Lighthouse, the Farm. I love this Roots. The North, King in the North. And then we get to the majors, which I have not seen in print. Super stoked. I had originally had What do I have that would show this? I guess the titles deck. Originally, I had the keys that I had made for the, I had to have indices for the major arcana. And I originally had black keys. I don't know, it just made sense. So I had black keys because most of this is just the ink sketched black ink. And so I had black keys. But with playing card divination, the red and the black are really important in terms of it's another layer to the reading. And so in using it, I thought, you know what, I'd actually really like the keys to be of a different color. And so I'd sent in like 3 to test doing it in a sepia color. And I really liked how that looked, so that then again, you can use the colors of the indices in your reading. And it sets it apart from the clubs and the spades. So I'm happy with how those turned out. So I'm going to zoom this in a little bit more just because I haven't seen these. So here we have the Fool, about ready to step off. And this is, I have it written down, but this is an actual bird that is, often near water. Here we have the Magician. Here we have the Priestess. Into the cave. Here we have the Empress. I liked the Empress and the Emperor, and these were old, I found, like gardening boxes or work tool boxes, around toolboxes. So this idea of the Empress creating the world that's going to grow, and then the Emperor is maintaining what is already there, or I guess building on some things as well. But anyways, that's how I did the Empress and the Emperor. The Teacher. So I have changed a few of the cards. This is my perfect deck, and I don't see Nellie having used the Hierophant or the Pope. So I've changed the Hierophant to the Teacher. The Lover's card, this is actually a silhouette of one of my daughter's wedding pictures. And I worked really hard at this. I mean, it's not hard in the sense that obviously you're tracing the image and filling it in with black, but it's not so easy. For me, it was not so easy, like to do it in such a way that I can see my daughter in that, and I can see my bonus son in that, in the images, and that was actually not super easy to achieve. So I'm really happy with how that turned out, and yeah, so that's the nod, obviously, to my daughter and my bonus son. Here we have the Chariot. Justice. This is an actual old hook, a scale that was used for fishing, either large fish being put on it, or obviously you could hook a basket on it with smaller fish. This was from a different hook setup, so it kind of combined a couple things, but that was pretty cool. To find that. So Justice, the Hermit, the Wheel. This is a light, a light structure from an actual lighthouse. There's not about a half hour, maybe an hour from here on Lake Erie. There's an amazing lighthouse that we could go up inside, walk up in it, and had a little like museum, and had, the actual light that would have been in there at one time. And I took a bunch of pictures of that. So obviously the turning of the light of the lighthouse is going to be in the deck. So that's the Wheel. The Strength, knots. I do knot magic. Like, I love knot work and knot magic, and the Strength of a knot. I was really actually happy because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the Strength card. And so I was really, when I thought of this, of using a knot in some way, that made me happy. So Strength. The Hanged. I don't have the Hanged Man or woman. It's just the Hanged. And obviously we have a tree on the side of a cliff. Here we have the Death card. Obviously this is underneath hopefully obviously this is underneath the water. This has a little nod to my son, actually, with this crab here was actually drawn by him, and so I photographed the drawing, and I did have to go in and outline Whoops, doesn't want to take. Well, I went in and had to outline to make it bolder and stand in the same sort of coloration, but that was actually drawn by my son. I changed the Temperance card to the Alchemist. There is a tradition of the Temperance card being called the Alchemist. It makes a lot of sense to the time period and to Nellie. And so I've changed the Temperance card to the Alchemist, which I love. I've also changed the Devil card to the Monster because of my love of monsters and monster stories and the ways in which those are written and why they're written and all of the good things. Works with sort of devil made me do it kind of thing, and being careful to abdicate certain powers and certain understandings away. But mine is a monster, and this was an early on card that I drew. Oops. And I love it. so yeah, you can see the little hand, kind of going around there. But anyways, that's the monster instead of the devil. Here we have the tower. So you can see that I utilized the Lenormand tower, but added in the storm and the lightning strike there. We have the star. So instead of sort of all of the stars, it is more of the fixed point, because for me the star card is about finding your fixed point and trusting that you can navigate your way. So having a compass rose star on there makes a lot of sense. The moon, dark and light side of the moon versus the cycle of the moon, and the sun, which it's not super easy to make a sun. This I had made a long time ago that was more graphic oriented than trying to be realistic oriented in her sketching. But yeah, so we have the sun and the moon. Oops. Judgment, actually I should have left that one out, but judgment is again a doorway or passageway, and if you look in there, that's actually the stork card. Which is that, moving on to a better place where you're moving forward. So the judgment has that sort of stop, assess, go through the passage, and you're moving on then to the next life. So I really like how that turned out. And then the world card obviously has a mix of the lighthouse. There's some of the cliff of the high priestess. And then there's the actual water of the ocean. And then I don't think you're going to be able to see, but the skull is actually in there from the death card as well with the world card. So I do like some of those nods to the other cards there. But I do really like how the world, everything sort of in harmony and in balance there with the world card. That turned out really good. That sounds terrible, but trying to make some of the cards like go off. I really do like the cards going off of the screen. Not all of them do, but I do like that. And so, you're not sure really though until it prints out if if the balance ends up being the way you wanted. So I'm really happy with how they turned out, especially that world card. You want to get that right. So, so yeah, super stoked with how that turned out. Let's zoom it back out a little bit here. Super stoked. Okay, so shuffle it up. Let's shuffle up all of them together. So exciting. There's so much, again, there's like so much work that it's not just, it's not just sketching work. Like some people can probably sketch these types of things super fast, right? Sketching is not my skill set. But it's not just that. Like it's, you're going from the concept, then it's a lot of, before you even start to sketch, it's a lot of, again, balancing the playing card, the fortune telling cards, and the tarot cards, and balancing that out, and then what image is going to be able to work with all three of those, and so on. So there's a lot of that, like figuring it out, like how is this going to work and be a mashup that works well and all of that. And then obviously then it's all of the sketching, and you know, if life gets in the way and it just starts to get long. But then it's so many other things, right? You're just the guidebook, and I'm still finishing up right now, but it's all that. And then it's like sending out for copies and tweaking the coloring and making sure the coloring is working and making sure the layers that, you know, make the, give it a little bit of aged look, and layerings of, I use different types of parchments to layer. So, you know, so then it's all the digital work, right? The digital work is a separate thing because the sketched image, but then you've got to do all the digital work. So it's just, there's a lot of work. And I'm not saying this is for myself, but just to remember for deck creators, like there's so much work that goes into it in a lot of different facets. And so then when you finally get to like hold that finished thing and say, okay, but now it's in all of that, the thinking over, the story, the sketching part, the organizing, the figuring out the system. Now, sometimes it's not. Like if you're just doing a tarot deck straight up or a Lenormand deck straight up, or I've done a Lenormand deck. But for like my Journey Oracle and for this one, there's a lot of mental work in saying, okay, I need to make sure that it all works on some level to the numbers, to the playing cards, the way that I read playing cards, to the fortune telling cards on it, to the tarot cards that are layered in there as well. And so, you know, there's just so much. For me, this is like a culmination deck, right? Of going back to the very beginning of playing cards for me and divination, but also like that full circle of everything that I love about cartomancy style divination, tarot, playing cards, Lenormand, fortune telling style decks. Like that's my jam, and sort of making it all come together. That for me is my perfect deck, right? I don't create a deck I can't create a deck for somebody else. But this is like the perfect deck that has, you know, everything the way that I see it and makes sense to me, and that I will love to pick up over and over and over again. And that I can literally take this deck. I have a playing card deck to do divination. I can pull out the Lenormand cards to do a grand tableau. I can do a tarot reading. And then what I found, and this you don't know until, you know, you use it, I actually love the mashup, and the style of reading for a mashup reading is just absolutely beautiful, and I enjoy it so much. I've been able to use it so much. So that's, you know, one of the things. Obviously I need to mix this more. One of the things about something taking longer, I do think things happen as they're supposed to happen, right? They happen as they're going to and as they should happen. And I think one of the benefits sometimes I found with both my Journey Oracle and this one of the benefits of that longevity, because I had a sample deck that I was using, is I've done literally hundreds of readings with it. And so that means by the time I get here, I feel very confident that this expresses my understanding of cartomancy and my focuses on cartomancy, and that it reads really beautifully because I've been able to read with it for all this time. So I do think that there are benefits. My favorite style of reading with cartomancy, playing card, and with Nellie's deck is a 6 card or a 9 card square, but my absolute favorite is a 6 card. So yeah, I am super happy with it. I'm happy with the majors. Actually, again, that queen was fixed, so this is the actual final deck, and I am in love with it. If you can say that you're in love with something that you did, which I think you're allowed to do, I can say that I am absolutely in love with Nellie's deck and Nellie. So there we go. I just wanted to say I was so excited about this as well. I was looking for fabric for a deck bag for it. And I wanted the fabric that I used in my deck bag that I've had all this time, which is, again, this is a more of a full-on sleeping bag. deck that my friend Deirdre makes. This is reproduction fabric from the time period that Nellie would have been in. Again, trying to keep around that 1861 time frame. But I was able to find locally a 19th century reproduction fabric. And when I sent a picture of this to my friend Patrick, who lives in Maine, he was like, that kind of, old vintage fabric is all over the place, like in the antique shops and things like that in Maine. And so I am massively in love. I even made myself a kind of spread cloth that can fit like a 9-card reading on it and things like that because I'm so in love with the fabric. This is not part of this is for myself, but these will be part of the initial pre-order of it. And so I was so stoked to be able to find again even fabric that would have been available for Nellie at that time. So okay. There's like all of these layers. I have all kinds of, I'll do another video. I have all kinds of little bits and bobs that I've collected. A fountain pen. Somebody sweetly sent me an inkwell that she could have had. Again, the writing decks I picked up early on. Little bits of like magazines that were about lighthouses and things like that, that I kind of picked up to make her really come to life for me. And again, her name, so Nellie C. McNally, is actually my great grandmother's maiden name, and there are other names in the journals that reference other of my actual grandmothers and aunts that were all immigrants from different countries, to bring that into play as well. So it just feels like so much for me personally. It's got a lot of personal life to it that is just exciting to have it all come together. Anyways, I'm done. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and that you enjoyed this in some way or another.